This is your number one source for all things comics, movies, and pop culture. It's Geek Week with Chris and Nick.
You're tuned into Geek Week.
I'm Chris Antawi.
And I'm Nick Rotundo. To all those listening, thank you for joining our discussion.
If you'd like to hear any of our old episodes, be sure to check out our YouTube account, which is posted on our Facebook account at www.facebook.com/geekweek885.
And with us today is one of our good friends and Chris's girlfriend, Samantha Bucher. Sam, how's it going?
It's going good. Thanks for having me on, guys.
No problem.
The new segment we're going to try to do this week, each week, as time permits, is called Dave's Comic Book Picks of the Week. Dave is the owner of Comics on the Green in Scranton, so if you're ever in the area, be sure to stop in. They have a great selection of back issues, graphic novels, action figures, and more.
So with that, we will get right into those picks. So the first one is Belfry, which is a one-shot comic by Image Comics, written and drawn by Gabriel Hardman. The description is an all-new horror one-shot from Gabriel Hardman. When an airliner crashes in a remote jungle, everyone walks away unscathed, only to find you can't escape the lush, brutal world of the Belfry. From Hugo Award-nominated writer and artist Gabriel Hardman, Invisible Republic, Kinski, and also Star Wars Legacy, The Belfry is a self-contained one-shot that may just strip you of your humanity.
Well then, that one line at the end is like
very dark.
I was like,
comic.
wow, I definitely want to pick this up just because that last line made me feel, I was like, what is going on? All right, the next one we're going to get into is also by Image Comics. It's called Old Guard. It's number 1, written by Greg Rucka and drawn by Leandro Fernandez. Description is Eisner-winning writer Greg Rucka, who's also done Lazarus, Black Magic, and Wonder Woman, and critically acclaimed artist Leandro Fernandez, the Discipline, Deadpool, and Punisher Max, they team up together to introduce the Old Guard. This is a story of old soldiers who never die and yet cannot seem to fade away. Trapped in an immortality without explanation, Andromache of Scythia, or known as Andy, and her comrades ply their trade for those who can find and afford their services. But in the 21st century, immortality is a hard secret to keep, and when you live long enough, you learn that there are many fates worse than death.
And finally, that last book, actually, it's a Marvel comic, so got a little twist there, but it's Thanos number 4. And Chris, I know, did you read number 4, or is it?
No, I read number 1 last night.
Okay.
And
so
it was great.
Yeah, this is written by Jeff Lemire and drawn by Mike Deodato. The description, Thanos has only one living child, Thane. He murdered all of his other offspring, but he didn't leave Thane alive out of love.
Yeah, Thanos is awesome. The book I read last night, just the intro scene was amazing. And I'm just going to say that's one of those books you definitely just go and pick up. Because Jeff Lemire, he's definitely a great writer in my eyes. Obviously not in my top 5, but he's up there. And Mike Deodato's art's great too. I actually wrote a review on it, but I'm not going to get into that. But now we're just going to get into our topic, I guess. It's favorite comic book writers and artists, the ones we know and love. Our top 5 is pretty much.
And this is a topic I think we've talked about a little bit in the past because, this is what it's all about here. This is where the source material comes from.
It's the reason we have TV shows and movies, guys. Just saying.
So with that, first we will get into our discussion of our favorite comic book writers, and we'll get into the artists after our halfway point break. So with that, Chris, why don't you take it away with the first writer?
All right. So Brian Azzarello, and he's written Joker, The World of Flashpoint featuring Batman, which is by far one of my favorite Batman storylines, and New 52 Wonder Woman. So the first comic that I read of his was Flashpoint Batman. And for those of you who don't know Flashpoint, please go read it or watch the movie or do something, because that is one of DC's best storylines by far.
I love that movie.
My God. Mm-hmm. And just seeing this whole different universe where Thomas is Batman and Martha's Joker and Bruce dies is awesome. And it's like this comic goes further into that than the movie and the Flashpoint actually did. It's like a side story just about that. It is so good. Oh my gosh. But yeah, it was phenomenal. And the artist we're going to feature during the break, Travis Ryan, also did a song based on the letter that Thomas wrote to Bruce to send back with Flash. And it was, guys, I listened to that and it makes me cry. If you don't at least tear up a little bit I don't think you're human.
Or at least feel some sort of emotion, you know.
Yeah. All right. Well, Nick, what's your pick?
One of my first picks is Robbie Thompson, kind of, I guess, up and coming. It's a newer series that I guess now has ended. I feel weird saying that because, you know, it was 12 issues. I loved this book because it was everything I ever loved about the Ultimate Spider-Man that kind of brought it back to, you know, modern times, even like more modern in 2015, 16, 17. But, you know, it's him back in high school, which I loved. So it's called Spidey. It was a 12 issue series from 2015 to 16. And, you know, he's already Spider-Man from the get-go. However, like every other Spider-Man comic, the first page explains how he became Spider-Man and stuff.
The origin story.
Oh,
of
yes.
Spider-Man. Like,
It's
a dozen times.
No, it's like watching The Flash. How like every episode is my name is Barry Allen. I'm the fastest man alive. So it's basically like that. But with that, you know, every issue is either a cool team up with like Iron Man, Captain America, Black Panther, and then there's also like the villains that he has already either come in contact with or the first time he's ever come in contact with them before. So he actually meets Gwen in high school and he tutors her and Flash in math, and she tutors both of them in history. So it's the weirdest thing ever, but it ends up with like I think it's either the last issue or the second to last issue. They end up going to homecoming together, or like the homecoming dance or whatever. And I thought that was a nice little crossover with the movie coming out. I don't know if it's supposed to be based off of this series now or not, or you know it's supposed to like exist together. But I love this series, and it's a shame that it ended the way it did. I read it. I was like, let's keep going. Come on. So with that, I will pass it on to Sam. What is your pick?
Okay, my first pick for favorite writer is Tom Taylor, and the first comic that I read from him is All New Wolverine, which is a current series from Marvel, and I think it's on issue 17 or 18 right now. But basically the premise is that Laura Kinney, aka X-23, Wolverine's clone, takes up the mantle after Logan falls. And it really centers on her growing into the character of Wolverine instead of X-23, and she's learning to control the urge to kill and be more kind of hack and slash like Wolverine. So she's trying to be a little more, pull back the reins on that. So while Taylor isn't female, he writes a really strong female character. She's smart, strong, clever, and she isn't over-sexualized at all. And Taylor brings in a lot of different characters like the Wasp and Squirrel Girl, and they don't take any of the spotlight away from Laura. She's her own person. And another thing that Tom Taylor does great is that he shows flashbacks to her mentorship with X-23. And you see the father-daughter relationship between them, and it's so cool. And how she is kind of applying that to the people she meets in her life now. I don't want to spoil anything, but yeah, it's a really cool story, and I urge you guys to check it out. And another comic series that Tom Taylor writes is Injustice. And even if you've played the game or just heard of it, you have to check out the comic because it will blow you away. The plot in itself is just one of the greatest comic plot lines that I've ever read. He takes the characters and he twists them. And he takes Superman, who's known as this like golden boy of DC, and he turns him into something really dark. And yeah,
So
Chris
good.
is smiling from ear to ear. He loves this
All New
series.
Wolverine was amazing. I love what Tom Taylor did, and I already loved him from Injustice, so I knew going into this that it was going to be a good series, and Laura's awesome. Injustice is fantastic. Oh, man, like I'm excited for Injustice, too. That's all I can really say, guys. Really, you should pick up Injustice and All New Wolverine, both, because they're both great series written by this one guy, and he's awesome. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, and of course, you know, I've wanted to pick this up at some point. I am a big fan of, you know, Logan as Wolverine and stuff, so I want to see how they transition that. But, you know, also, I do want to get that variant cover. I've told Chris this millions of times, and it's Deadpool asking Laura, hey, how's Logan? And she slaps him like the Batman meme,
and Robin,
and
yeah.
it says, Logan is dead. So I would love to pick that up, at least add that to my collection.
And I'm a huge fan of Wolverine, like Logan Wolverine. So going into it, I was a little wary because I'm like, I don't know if anyone can replace like Logan. But Laura just does a great job, and she's her own person. And even though she's Logan's clone, you see like similarities, but she really is her own person and her own character. So it's a cool transition.
All right. Well, Chris, you are up next with your next writer.
It's going to be Mark Millar. And this guy has been like inspiring me and like really just with his writing since childhood, like Ultimate X-Men, like the ultimate series of comics, like with Spider-Man, X-Men, all of them. It's just amazing. Oh my gosh, like this is what brought me into comics, just the storytelling of between Brian Michael Bendis with Spider-Man and Mark Millar with this. And he also does Superman Red Son, which is a really cool story. Like it's kind of a twist where Superman lands in Soviet Russia and he's like Stalin's golden boy, so to speak. And it's like, what is happening? Batman's a communist? Like,
yeah.
Holy moly. He also does Civil War, which is by far one of Marvel's best storylines I've ever read. And he also does Reborn right now. And it's an ongoing series with Greg Capullo as the artist. And Sam and I both have read it and loved it. But basically, I'll give you a little tidbit about Mark Millar. My best friend Harry is actually his distant cousin and was nice enough to sign Civil War #1 for him and send it back to him. So now he has a signed copy of Civil War issue #1. Like, amazing. Probably worth a lot of money now. And the Civil War to me was like one of the best written superhero comics because it took a political standpoint and it made you feel distraught over which side to pick between Iron Man and Captain America. You're like, I don't know where to go with this. I don't know what to do. It just really kind of pulled you in. And people died.
Yeah.
People died in this. And there's a panel, one of my favorite panels is where they're locking, like Tony Stark and his guards are locking Daredevil up, and he says, he comes in with a silver dollar in his tongue, and the guards find it, give it to Stark, and he says, guess that's 31 pieces of silver you got there, huh? Making a Judas reference that he betrayed them. And I was like, and it's giving me goosebumps as I'm talking about it. It was just amazing. I was like, oh my gosh, I love Daredevil. And then Superman Red Son, as I said, one of my favorite Elseworlds stories where he lands in Soviet Russia. And it's like, it's cool because Batman, like, you know, he's Stalin's prodigy. Batman's a communist. Wonder Woman, Batman actually beats Wonder Woman because, like, somehow something happens and I won't say what, but it was just crazy. Oh my gosh. And then Reborn, puts a new twist on, like, life after death for Bonnie Black, that character. And wow, it really kind of hooks you in the feels in the first issue. The first issue was great. And each character is, like, unique in Reborn and likable, and so are the villains. Like you're not like, oh, that character's just kind of there. No, they're all there, and they all have reasons why they're there. And Mark Millar, guys, please check out some of his stuff. This is someone I would definitely just say, like, go out, get Civil War, get Superman Red Son, or even pick up Reborn if you're into kind of like that whole thing with like life after death and like just trying to see what happens with that. Do it. That's all I'm gonna say. Just do it, like Shia LaBeouf. Just go do it. All right, that's enough of me. Nick, who's your next pick?
So, Chris, you're going to like this one as well. It is Jeff Loeb. The one I'm going to focus on most, the series that he wrote was Spider-Man Blue, which took place July 2002 to April 2003. However, he also wrote like Daredevil Yellow and countless other comics. This guy's great as well. But Spider-Man Blue to me always had like that feel like this is something that I took close to heart because it was more of a in-depth look at the relationship between Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy and how her death affected him. And the fact that, you know, MJ and Gwen actually knew each other. Like, he met both of them in college. So it was weird to see like the two of them trying to fight over dating him, and and then everybody thinks he's like this little nerd or whatever. And in college, he's got like a motorcycle, and he lives in this huge apartment with Harry. And I was like, the heck is going on here? I love it. But the big plot twist at the end, I love, and I'm not trying to spoil it, but I will say go check this out. Chris was kind enough to give me this as give me a couple issues from it. It's a 6-issue series, and he gave it to me for Christmas because I got him that pop of the Joker from The Dark Knight Returns.
Still a great pop. Oh my gosh, that's another like Frank Miller is something I'm gonna get into later because that was Dark Knight Returns is my favorite Batman story of all time. Literally, just saying. All right. Anyway.
So, but yeah, the whole aspect of that storyline, that is a very big storyline that I keep close to my heart. So I appreciated those issues and definitely check those issues out. So up next, we have Sam with her next pick.
My next pick is Marguerite Bennett. And before I launch into the great comic series that she wrote, you guys need to know that while Chris has Batman and Nick has Spider-Man, I have the X-Men. And I am a huge X-Men nerd, and I love them. So she writes a story called A Years of Future Past, and it takes a twist off of the classic X-Men story Days of Future Past. So basically what you need to know is that mutants are being hunted, the Sentinels are running rampant in the streets, and it's a really dark and tough time. So it's a 4-issue miniseries, I think, that takes place after the Secret Wars event. And oh my gosh, it was so cool. And it focuses on Kitty Pryde and Colossus and their kids and their family. And Kitty Pryde and Colossus are just great. Like, those are 2 great X-Men characters.
Which is, of course, Chris's favorite character.
Duh.
And I actually met Marguerite Bennett in person at New York Comic Con this year, and she was so cool in real life. And I told her that I really loved her story, and I loved how she put Kitty and Colossus together, because in some storylines, Kitty and Colossus don't always end up together. So I like how this one, they were a family. And she was like, wow, I love them too. And she signed my issues and put little like hearts around Kitty and Colossus for me.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I follow her on Instagram, and she does this really funny hashtag called Marguerites. And she posts like all her favorite foods and stuff and like cool places that she
It gets
eats
you
at.
hungry after a while.
Yeah, it
I will
does.
say that.
It's funny. All right, now on to Chris.
Oh man! All right, we're breaking into. This is like the got me back into comics in 2011, guys. Scott Snyder, he's the man. Oh, if anybody knows Batman, it's this guy. All right, so he did New 52 Batman, he did Batman Black Mirror, and All Star Batman right now. All right, so like as I said, this pretty much got me into collecting again in 2011. Like I fell off for comics for a little while, and this is what I picked up the first issue, and I was like, wow, this is freaking amazing.
Back to basics.
Yeah, it was great, and I just loved his writing. And as soon as when I read the first and second volume of this series, I was just like, I want to keep going. And at New York Comic Con 2015, I met him with my friend Nick Benny. We went to his writer's spotlight panel. He was such a humble guy, very down to earth. You could tell he really cares about Batman as a character. And he told us the first time he wrote a Batman story was Batman Black Mirror, which Sam and I had just read, and it was very good. And it was interesting because it was like the story that he wanted to tell of Batman, but it was Batman as Dick Grayson, and it was so different. It was just so interesting how like the plot twists and things like that. And he was cool because he told us a story about him getting this writer Jock. So what he did was he went to a bar with Jock, and he's like, Jock's like, if you can keep up with me in drinking, I will be on the book with you. And he did, and Jock was on the book, and I was like, yes, this is great. He talked to us like we were his friends and his family. Like he didn't talk to us like we were just fans. He literally talked to us like we were just like friends, you know? And that was amazing. That's what you want from like a writer that you really like, I feel like. You want to have that kind of relationship in a sense. And he signed these 3D printed Batarangs that Nick made, and even though there was like a limit in the line with her signing like 3 comics per person, he signed more anyway. I had like 5 signed, and Nick had like a bunch, and like we had a picture with him, and Greg Capullo, and they're a rocking team, and like all the time, he on his Instagram he'd be like, oh, my brother Greg, and like he calls Greg like his brother, even though they're just like they're really close friends, and I think that's amazing to find.
Yeah, I'm pretty jealous of you guys for that.
Oh man, and All-Star Batman, guys, all you gotta know is Batman at one point has a chainsaw.
Yes.
And that's all I'm gonna leave you with, because you can check it out yourself.
If that doesn't pique your interest, I don't know what will.
Exactly. I don't know.
As long as he calls it the Bat Chainsaw, that's all I care about.
So going off of like Batman's Bat Family, hey Nick, so what's your next pick? I know what it is, but I just want to hear you say it.
So with that, since you said it is Dick Grayson as Nightwing, or as Batman, I should say, this is Chuck Dixon with his series of Nightwing. This mainly took place in the 1990s, and this guy is a great writer. I love his Nightwing. We've told this story how many times now? I don't even know. It's almost like we're just beating a dead horse.
You're
but
really fine. All
Chris,
you have to know is that I recommended Chuck Dixon's Nightwing to him. He didn't really look at it for like a few months, and then we went to not Comics on the Green. Wow, we went to see
Jay and Silent Bob's Secret Stash in Jersey.
And the first comic Mike Zapsik recommended him when he told him like what he was interested in was this comic, and Nick was like,
"Okay,
oh, what? I mean, okay, I guess I'm gonna get it now." And I mean,
he made the face of 1,000 suns.
Yeah, it was so bad. I was kind of mad, but also like, you know what? I mean, I guess it's okay. It's not my money, so.
But yeah, no, I was laughing at that. That story though is great. I love the storyline of the idea that this is Nightwing from the ground up, where he first starts out as Nightwing on his own in Bloodhaven. So as much as I've told Chris time and time again, I hate New 52 Nightwing. He's got a red suit now. It's not, and it's just the whole Agent Grace and everything. I wanted it back to basics from the start. So that's where Chuck Dixon came along, and it told the story of how he used to have a giant ponytail, and then it got cut in battle, and then he just had long hair, like a giant mullet. So I was like, all right, I'm okay with this. So it was a great storyline. I still have to pick up. They're graphic novels now, so I have to pick up number 4 and number 5. But I read the first 3, and they're just amazing.
Hey, Nick, want to know something funny? Guess who recommended Nightwing New 52 Volume 1 to me? I'll give you a hint.
Mike Sapsik.
Yeah, there you go.
I know. That's what I told him. I said, I'm not a fan of New 52. That's why he gave me Chuck Dixon.
It's okay. I mean, just because Nick hasn't read it or anything, so I mean, how would he know? But it's all right.
Wow, throwing shade already. I'm 20 minutes in.
So I will add, lastly, though, that the artist for Chuck Dixon's Nightwing is Denny O'Neil, which Chris said take a look at, because I never really focused on the art as much. But recently, once he said go check out Denny O'Neil, I started looking back at the books, and I was like, this guy really has great detail with the artwork and everything. We'll get into more artists in after the break, but this guy, I didn't put him on the list, but I love his work for Chuck Dixon's Nightwing.
All right.
So with that, up next we got Sam.
All right. So my next pick is a writer her name is Renee DeLiz. And what's cool about her is not only did she make my top 5 writers, but she also made my top 5 artists. So the first comic that I read of hers was The Legend of Wonder Woman, and it was a 9-part miniseries. And she and her husband, Ray Dillon, worked on it together. And she did the story and the pencils, and then he helped out with the art by coloring and inking it. And I'll talk more about the art later, but wow. Well, the story focuses more on the Amazons and how Diana transitioned into this world. And takes place World War I era. Steve Trevor's in it, Etta Candy. Oh, it's just such a great story, and it reads like a storybook, but you still have some nice action in there. And one thing I love is that Renee DeLiz brought a different perspective to Wonder Woman as a female writer, because if you take a look at the other main Wonder Woman writers, they're all male. You have Brian Azzarello, who Chris talked about before. He did the New 52 Wonder Woman. Grant Morrison wrote Wonder Woman Earth 1, and then Greg Rucka wrote the new Rebirth series. And not that I'm saying anything that she's better than any of these male writers. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that she brought a different perspective, because all 3 of those other writers are fantastic. But sometimes you just need a different perspective on things, and I think she brought that in there. There was supposed to be a second part to the Legend of Wonder Woman series, but it got canceled by DC. So now she's working on Lady Power Punch, which is her own kind of story. I think she's publishing it herself, and she's working with her husband again on it. So yeah, pass it on to Chris now.
All right, this is one of my other guys, man. This will be Batman: Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller. Frank Miller is definitely up there. This is by far my favorite Batman story of all time. The Flashpoint Batman is below this. And Scott Snyder, no offense, is below this, because this was to me, this is what really, this story was so good. I don't even know how to explain it, because it took Superman, you took Batman, and one sided with the government, and then one doesn't care, and it's kind of a parallel to Marvel's Civil War, and it's an interesting story because Batman's really old and he's returned to Gotham in the Cape and Cowl to fix what's going on with the mutants, no relation to the X-Men, and they're trying to take over Gotham, and since he's like the symbol and all these people, like he's getting all these people to riot with him, Superman is told by the president, listen, you might have to put him down. Oh, like I don't even know, guys. It's worth seeing. Like it's worth reading the fight scene alone. Like this book is just that good, and Frank Miller really captures this. I guess this kind of like character. I don't know, and he does this with Daredevil as well because they took the Netflix series. They took Frank Miller's Man Without Fear, and that's what was the Netflix series for Daredevil. Like the first season, they took that whole thing, and it's just if they're taking like this kind of source material from this guy and they're using it and adapting it just like Dark Knight Returns was adapted into Batman v Superman, it clearly says that this guy is doing something right, you know? But anyway, Nick, what's going on? What's up next?
So we've talked a lot about Spider-Man, but we're staying on it.
Surprise!
This is the last Spider-Man one that we're talking about for the writers, though. It is Brian Michael Bendis. This guy's written so much, but the one thing that really, like, this is what my childhood was. Like, when I collected comics, when I still collect comics, but when I did read those comics back in the day, it was between the Ultimate series and another Spider-Man series, which we'll get into. But in the artist, I should say, part of this talk. But the one thing that I loved was that modern feel of Peter being a teenager and being Spider-Man at the same time. And so Brian Michael Bendis' Ultimate Spider-Man from October 2000 to June 2011, 200 issues to date.
It's that good, though. Like, it really
I know.
is. Like, I read the first volume, and I was like, I want to read more of this. And my comic shop at the time didn't have the second volume. I'm like, are you serious? You're going to let me just have this volume? Like, you're going to do this to me?
So I remember I used to like get the issues, the single issue ones, but they were a double issue. So you'd read a comic, and then halfway through, it'd be the end of that comic. And then you'd literally close the comic, flip it upside down, and on the other side is the second issue. So like I collected a bunch of those of all the Ultimate Spider-Man. I'm a huge fan of that series, and if anything, and just, you know, the feel of seeing a modern teenage Peter. Like, there's no other words to explain that, because, you know, as everyone always says, you know, like Peter Parker is probably the most relatable character in comics, or at least one of. So
there you go.
well, it's been talked about, but I mean, to me, he is very relatable. So reading a modern Peter as a teenager, when I was a teenager, it just kind of clicked. So that's why I love that series. So I highly recommend that as well. But with that, we'll go on to Sam.
Okay, my next writer is Brian K. Vaughan, and he writes a series called Saga, and I think Saga is up in the 40s or 50s now in terms of issues, and I've read the first 3 volumes, and I just started the 4th, and wow, I'll sit down to read 1 issue, and I'll end up reading 4 because it's just that good, and things happen in the end, like there's all these plot twists, and you're just like, oh, well, now I have to read another one, and you're just there all day. So it's kind of like a modern twist on Romeo and Juliet at the heart of it. You have 2 aliens from different planets, and they fall in love, and it's their story. They have a child, and they're on the run. So it's their story. It's about family and action, drama, all this other stuff. But what I love is that Brian K. Vaughan shows the realistic aspects of being a parent in this book. And it's just really funny. And even though, like, they're in the middle of a space war, it's funny because the main character, like Alana, doesn't know what an umbilical cord is and doesn't know how to make her baby stop crying. And it's just really funny just to see this realistic stuff. And another note on Alana is that she's a really strong female character, and she was a warrior from her planet. And even though she can, like, break a guy's neck, the next minute she's cradling her baby and singing her a lullaby, and it's a good way of showing different sides to different characters. All right, now Chris.
All right, this is a guy who's actually friends with Scott Snyder. No surprise why I like him, because he writes another one of my favorite characters, which is Daredevil. He's also written oh my gosh, I can't talk. Inhumans. He wrote a small series on Star Wars, like Obi-Wan and Anakin. The first comic I read by him was Daredevil #1, and I thought it was awesome because Daredevil this time is an apprentice/partner named Blind Spot. And like, yeah, you're like probably laughing in your head because Blind Spot, oh, Daredevil's blind, haha. But he's actually pretty awesome. Let me tell you, like, And the way Soule balances Daredevil's lawyer and vigilante sides, it's just great. He does there's no, it's not like you're seeing more of Daredevil. You're seeing both Matt Murdock as the lawyer and Daredevil as the vigilante. And the mentorship between Daredevil and Blind Spot, it's great. It's almost like, it almost mimics a Batman and Robin, but like more like Blind Spot's more of an equal, you know? And I'm gonna talk about this really short story. I went to Comic-Con in New York. I mean, surprise, surprise. Chris goes to Comic-Con a lot. I know. And I was about to get all my issue. I went over to Charles Soule's table. He's about to get up to go to lunch, and I had a box, and I was opening it, and I had like 4 comics. He's like, "I'll sit back down now. How are you?" And then just started talking to me, and he signed my issue of Obi-Wan Anakin, and he signed it MTF BWY. Couldn't figure out what that meant. May the Force be with you. Wow, Chris, good job. Like, and he signed it that, and I was like, this is awesome. I love this guy. He's great. And he's the friendliest person in Artist Alley. He made you feel welcome, and he literally put his lunch on the side for me. Come on, guys. But anyway, that's enough about him, guys. Check him out. The Daredevil series is great. Love it.
And he does great work on the Inhuman series, too. It's really, if you're interested in checking out those characters, read up on his run.
Definitely. All right, Nick. Well, I know.
My last pick for writers, plot twist, I guess, kind of. If you know me, besides Spider-Man, all of Marvel pretty much, Batman, Nightwing, there's another thing that I love, and that is The Walking Dead. Obviously I have my other show on WRKC here, The Rocking Dead, but what I love about this writer is, of course, Robert Kirkman. He's the creator of The Walking Dead and even still has complete say over the TV series too. So the fact that whatever he doesn't, do what he thinks is right in the series, he can change like a death in the TV show. So I like that. And just, it's still going on. It was from October 2003 to present. And, this guy is a genius when it comes to writing about the zombie apocalypse, because you'd never think half the stuff that he writes about would even be thought of like in any other type of zombie movie, TV show, comic book, whatever. And I mean, it's up to 164 issues now. I have 163 I just picked up, which was actually really cool. But I mean, this guy gives so much detail into backstories about different people. Like, we literally just found out, 10, 20 issues ago, something like that, about Negan's backstory before the apocalypse, how, he was a high school gym teacher and coach, and also a used car salesman. And he used to use profanity a lot while playing ping pong with his students in his garage. He would challenge them to ping pong, kick all their butts, and then just curse at them. And their parents hated it, but they couldn't do anything about it.
Oh, gosh.
But, of course, his wife gets sick, and he's having an affair on his wife. And she gets sick, and then he is in bed in the hospital with her, laying down, and he's like, "I'm so sorry, like, all this time I never realized, blah, blah, blah." And then she unfortunately passes away, and her name is Lucille. So he names the bat after his wife, and right as like she dies, he looks out the window and sees the zombie apocalypse starting, and then turns and sees his wife has become a zombie.
Oh my god.
So yeah, it's really brutal. So like, just stories like that, like, for God's sake, they couldn't do it on TV, but he took out a baby in the comic series.
Yeah, the comic series is brutal.
It is really brutal, but that's like what I love. It's like, what do you do in situations like this? And he tells that.
You could buy these in compendiums, and they're like, my friend Pat, he read them and he loves them. Guys, definitely go pick that up if you're interested in like zombie kind of stuff. Like, I will, even though I haven't watched Walking Dead that much, I will say that I love what I saw of it.
Definitely. So with that, we will end the writer talk with Sam's last pick.
Okay, guys, my last pick is Kieran Gillen, who co-created the series The Wicked and Divine. And this series is unlike anything else I have ever read. So the premise is that people are chosen to take on the mantle and powers of a certain god, and along with doing this, they become famous. But the catch is that they only live for 2 years, and after those 2 years, they die, and the mantle is passed on to someone else. So it's a cool twist on like a mythical god story, and what's cool is they take different gods from all different cultures. So you have like Amaterasu from, I believe, Japanese culture, Lucifer from the traditional Christian stories, Persephone from Greek mythology, stuff like that. And I read a lot, and usually in certain books and stuff, I'll be able to pick up on plot twists. But this book has just had so many different plot twists that have caught me completely by surprise. I have to put the issue down and just be like, whoa, what the heck did I just read? Or sometimes it makes me want to just throw it across the room because I'm like, I can't believe you just did that.
Been there, done that.
Yeah. Oh, and the characters are so complex. And I'll talk about the art later, but the art really adds to just the intensity of this story.
Now it's time to dive into our favorite comic book artists, and we're actually going to start with Sam this time. What's your pick, Sam?
Okay, so I talked about these guys briefly before, but Ray Dillon and Renee DeLiz are the husband and wife team who worked on the series The Legend of Wonder Woman. And the art in this series is just beautiful. It's like you're reading a storybook, and the character designs and the colors used in it are beautiful. And if you're looking to check out some beautiful art, check out this series. They also worked on one for Peter Pan, and now they're working on Lady Power Punch together. No.
All right, Nick, what's your pick?
So, being a kid from the 90s, it is a 90s artist. He also, I guess, did a lot of the writing as well, but it is Todd McFarlane. Now, this guy's probably most famous for Spawn, which I do have a couple issues of. I had so lucky to have my dad's friend have a bunch of issues that he just decided to pass on to me, and the artwork's fantastic. But Spider-Man in the 90s that Todd McFarlane did was a huge influence on me, because the one thing that I love about Spider-Man in the issues that I love, like the series that I love, is the fact when he has huge eyes. So Todd McFarlane took that way out of proportion, made them even bigger than they've ever been. And I think that's something that I really loved, because the emotion, so people that wear masks in TV and, in movies and stuff like that, you don't really see the emotion. Like, look at, for example, Maguire's Spider-Man and Garfield's Spider-Man. Whereas now you look at Tom Holland and he has the expressive eyes that Stark gave him. But to me, in the issues, when you look at like Spider-Man and he's like doing some crime investigation, or he's squinting, the actual white in his mask actually squints, and having huge eyes makes that even more expressive. So the way he drew Spider-Man to me was one of the versions that to me was true to the character, I think.
That's awesome. I do remember looking up some of McFarlane's work, and I actually have Spawn the Animated Series, and each episode has him say a little bit like of an intro before it, and it's great. And I do love Spawn, and I did like his version of Spider-Man the best, I gotta say. As far as comic book art, his version of Spider-Man is probably the coolest, next to like the Ultimate.
And they are trying to reboot Spawn with a either TV or movie series or something like that. And there's talks of like the TV spin-off series, Kevin Smith being involved, but it's all over the place, and I'm excited to see anything, honestly, because the movie wasn't the best. But I think, if they decided to reboot it, make it even creepier, maybe even rated R, again, I think it would be great.
Yeah, I completely agree. I heard Kevin Smith's doing a Spawn series. Like, he's going to head the Spawn series for TV, so that's cool. I'm going to get to my artist, and it's going to be Darwin Cook. Unfortunately, he died on May 14, 2016, R.I.P. He was, and I wish I would have known about his art before this, because I felt really bad about it. Because when I looked up his art, I realized his style was awesome. It was a very vintage, cartoony art style. His book, The New Frontier, kind of reads like an animated movie, and even the animated movie was excellent. Wow. And I'm a huge fan of animation. Batman the Animated Series is what got me back into the comic book world and everything else when I was younger. And just seeing this guy's animation really I just loved it. I ate it up every second of the movie, and I could picture the characters moving while I was reading his book. And it's just such a classic look, and just how he draws each Justice League character. It's great. I love it. Guys, just do him a favor, and if you ever have some time, even just pick up Justice League New Frontier, the book or the movie. Either one. It's in his comic book covers. Me and my girlfriend Sam here started collecting them, and they're fantastic. I gotta love it. Yeah, that's all I gotta say about him. He's awesome, and rest in peace. All right, Sam, what's your next pick?
My next pick is Marcio Takara, and he started working on the all-new Wolverine series, issue 7, which just happens to be my favorite issue of the series right now. And his art is just beautiful. It's very soft, if that makes sense. There's not a lot of harsh lines to it. It's a little animated, like Chris was saying about Darwin Cook's art. But what I love about Marcio Takara's art is the way he draws Wolverine. She's not over-sexualized, and her Wolverine costume, it's the classic blue and yellow suit that Logan wears, and it's pretty much the male counterpart of her costume looks exactly the same. Sometimes when you see women in comic books, they're put in these ridiculous outfits. Like, think of Psylocke and her, like, I don't even know what to call it. It's like a bathing suit.
Yeah.
So if you took her costume and put it on a male, it would look completely ridiculous. But that's not the case with All New Wolverine. It's a costume built for fighting, and he just does that series so well. So, Nick?
So, staying on this Big-Eyed Spider-Man track is Mark Bagley. He did the Ultimate Spider-Man series, which I talked about earlier with the writer, Brian Michael Bendis. But going against what Sam said with, the soft tones of an artist, the thing that I love about Bagley's artwork was how he was so harsh with these harsh lines. He gave Peter this long hair that he hasn't had in a while. They went back to that. And he drew like teenagers of the modern age. So the idea of, looking into what kids wore back then, like back in the early 2000s, and drawing that. And, it almost gave me a feel of like the Telltale series in a sense, with, like the black lines across like certain areas of the face and hair and stuff. So that's kind of how he drew, in my opinion. But I love what he did with that series.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. The Ultimate Spider-Man to me, like, definitely read like a Telltale, game, and it was just like you're seeing like decisions Peter Parker makes, and you're seeing what he's doing, and you're like, the villains are cool. Like one of my favorite designs for one of his villains, Green Goblin, was just a big hulking goblin, and it was just so cool.
His Green Goblin is probably one of my favorite Green Goblin designs. I would love to see that come into the movies at some point.
It'd be great. Yeah, guys, definitely check out Ultimate Spider-Man, any Ultimate Comics, like, for certain. The next guy I'm going to get into is Jim Lee, one of my really big favorites. He actually did Batman Hush with Jeff Loeb. He did Justice League with Jeff Johns, and his art is just great, like amazing. Proportions are, like, compared to like somebody like Bruce Timm, his like how he makes a big torso and small legs. Jim Lee's his proportions are all accurate, and like they're all like, not accurate, but they're all like, everything is like the size that you'd expect it to be. And he makes his characters big, but like also realistic. And I love his Batman. His Batman's by far one of my favorite Batmans. His art's so catching when you read Batman Hush. It really expresses the story. It draws you in. You want to, and like when my friend Nick Benny let me borrow Hush, I couldn't stop reading it. It was just that good. And Sam read it too, and it was like her first Batman story. Because it was funny because we went to Batman v Superman the night it premiered, and Benny brought this book, and Sam was reading it. I was like, wow, I've never read a Batman comic before, but this is great.
Yeah, I was sitting on the movie theater floor waiting in line, and Benny hands me this book, and he's like, here, to help you pass the time. And I started reading it, and wow, really good.
They're iconic. And I just love the way he draws.
Jim Lee's the best. I didn't put him on my list, but he's right up there with those artists, man. I mean, there's not much else to say about Jim Lee. He is Jim Lee.
Mm-hmm.
That's all you need to know, really. All right, Sam, what's your next pick?
My next artist is Fiona Staples, who did work on the Saga series I talked about before the break. Saga takes place in this fantasy world, and the designs that Fiona Staples has of all the characters in the world, just really cool and beautiful. And she does a great job at capturing the different expressions of the characters. It's really funny sometimes when you like look at them, and they come right off the page. Nick?
So following up with that, another series that was very dear to my heart, besides the Ultimate series that I grew up reading the the early 2000s Amazing Spider-Man series. This was the 616 universe. This is everything that's in continuity with the the real timeline. And John Romita Jr., who it's got to be such an honor to like follow up your father, who's a legend, John Romita Sr. So John Romita Jr. In his father's footsteps, drawing Spider-Man, even also drawing Daredevil and Superman in, I believe it was the New 52 Superman. But like his Spider-Man to me also, I've kind of, as I've aged, I've realized as much as I do love McFarlane and Bagley, I think I've really fallen back on Romita Jr. the most, because I mean, there's something that he does with like the way the fabric of Spider-Man's suit's made. He makes it like shine or something. And the whole, when you look at the eyes, the black part of the eye on his mask is actually thicker on the top than it is on the bottom. And just something about that is just so like aesthetically like nice. And the one story that he drew that I searched for years, finally have it. Chris, I've talked about this a couple times, and it's actually a story that's very dear to my heart because, well, my dad was a first responder during 9/11, was the black issue of Spider-Man, which was, the 9/11 issue. This is the first issue after 9/11, and the artwork, the first thing you open after a completely black cover, you open it up, and it's Spider-Man standing on the side of a building with his hands on his head like, dear God, what is happening? And you just see the rubble of New York. And just that took me away, like just the emotion of that.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about that. That was great. Just from what, and I remember we were talking about this back when I was in Mr. Berry's class, so like comic books and superheroes and stuff, and we were gonna do like a kind of audio thing for it. It was, and I love to still do that.
Oh, I would too.
It's definitely something I want to look into. I haven't read it, but I definitely want to look into that. And John Romita Jr. has also done All-Star Batman with Scott Snyder right now, and man, he does draw him well, and the colors in that are great. But anyway, I'll get to my next pick. It's Steve McNiven. He's the one who drew Civil War with Mark Millar, and I noticed a pattern in the artists that I pick. I love like a realistic, probably harsher tone with characters, and like I like them like kind of bigger like in size, and like it's just his Civil War book really. I kept reading. I love the way he designed his characters, even like Daredevil, Iron Man, Captain America. They just look so good, and you read this and you just keep going, and you don't stop until you're done. I lent it to my friend Krista, and she read it in a night because that's how she was like. It was amazing. I don't even know how I stopped reading. I couldn't stop reading it. And it's something I'd want to see made into like an animated movie. If they were just a Civil War animated movie, it would be and just rated R too. Like I would just be like, oh, just take my money, like just take it. 'Cause
all of it so now.
Good. Yeah, I love that whole Civil War. Just obviously as a book, I love it. Like between the writing and the art, it's just amazing. All right, well, we're gonna get on to Sam's next pick.
My next pick is Jamie McKelvey, who is the other co-creator of the Wicked and Divine series I talked about before. And his art is just gorgeous. Oh my gosh. I can't even express enough how beautiful this art is. And the character designs are so cool, and the way he just incorporates all these people into like you see some of them as normal people, and then you see them after their transformation into the gods, and it's just so cool. Lots of colors and yeah, and it's cool because he's also from Malvern, PA, which is not that far from where I live. So PA represent. Nick?
So with that, this one is another PA resident, actually from almost like right around here. We met him, all three of us met him at Free Comic Book Day last year, and he actually drew Chris and I both a sketch. He does Injustice Gods Among Us, the comic series. This is Tom Derenick. This guy's the best, and I mean, a big spin here for me because this is a DC artist, so completely different there. But he drew Ben Affleck's Batman in the mech suit for me on Dark Knight Returns 3, the third part of the series, and I had a number 1 blank issue, a blank cover, so he drew that for me. I still have that in my room at home. I love it.
That was gorgeous, and like going to like Comics on the Green and meeting him was great. Just meeting an artist in person, something about that. Even like especially outside of Comic-Con where they're all probably stressed out and stuff. Meeting them like in a public place and they want to be there. It's great.
I really hope he's there this year too.
I think he will be. Yeah, guys, Comics on the Green, great place. I'm gonna keep plugging that until the end of the show. But shout out to Dave. Dave's awesome. Anyway. Basically, I got Tom Derenick to draw the Flash in his Injustice regime suit, not like his regular suit, and it's great because when he drew this, he drew like him throwing a lightning bolt, like because obviously from the Flash show, if you have seen it, Barry Allen eventually learns how to do that, and it was so good. And he's like, I wish we use this suit in the comics more often. I love this suit. He looks like Hermes because he has these big bolts on the side of his heads, and it was great.
How great would it be if it turns out now, if you like go back to Injustice and you look and you start flipping through, all of a sudden Flash is wearing this suit?
Yeah, I'd be like,
it's all because of you,
maybe
Chris.
I made a little difference. I don't know, but all right, we're just gonna, I guess, dive into my character. I've been talking for 20 minutes. David Finch, another great artist. When I read Batman Rebirth, issue number 1, I just like the way he draws Batman. It's a grittier, harsher, realistic, and that's like the theme of my pretty much all the art I like is harsh and realistic. And I love this certain scene in this Batman Rebirth number 1 was where Batman was trying to fly a plane into Gotham and like try to direct it like into Gotham and get it without like damaging the area around it. And it was so cool. And he also puts Alfred. He also puts like Alfred in the Batman suit in the Batmobile, and there's a panel, and it's great. And I love it. Oh man. Anyway, I'm gonna let it move on because I've been talking too much. Sam, what's your next pick?
Okay, I've saved the best for last. My last artist is Dave Cockrum, and I cannot express enough how important his art has been throughout my life, and it's just wow. And you may not know his name, but you definitely know what he helped to create. He was the guy who thought up and designed Nightcrawler, Colossus, Storm, Mystique, Miss Marvel, Phoenix, and a ton of other characters.
Oh, jeez.
He was also the first guy to draw Wolverine in an X-Men comic. And for those of you who don't know, Wolverine actually did not appear in an X-Men comic first. He appeared in a Hulk comic. But Dave Cockrum's the one who drew him in an X-Men comic first. And he was responsible for revamping 2 series, The Legion of Superheroes and The Uncanny X-Men. And without Dave Cockrum, The Uncanny X-Men, and maybe even X-Men Now, wouldn't even be the same without him. Yeah, and his art is just so great. And even though I've read a ton of Nightcrawler stuff, his designs of Nightcrawler are just so iconic to me. And when I was like in high school, I used to try to draw Nightcrawler all the time because I'm a huge X-Men nerd. Nightcrawler's my favorite. I have a little shrine of him in my room. I'd base my drawings off of his, not even realizing it, because his is just so iconic to me. And now I run a custom pop making business, and when I made my custom Nightcrawler pops, I used his artwork too. And he has a special place in my heart. Nick?
So with that, this one's kind of short. Because it's kind of newer, and this is my last one. It is Nathan Stockman, who was the artist for the Spidey series from 2015 to 16, which I talked about, that 12-issue series. Now, I mean, again, this is a modern age Peter, so you have to look at what people are wearing, how people act, and draw based on that. So to me, Nathan Stockman really put that into character, as well as, you know, this is supposed to be like Peter's still up and coming. It's his first like bout as Spider-Man, so it's his first suit. How do you draw that? How do you go against John Romita Sr.'s original Spider-Man design? So, I mean, there's a couple changes here or there. You know, the symbol, the webbing. Now this guy is this is the newest artist that was part of the series. The series changed artists a couple times, but Stockman did the last 3 or 4 issues, and that's honestly my favorite suit out of the couple ones. The Spider changed a couple times. That's really the only difference. But the big thing that they did between John Romita Sr. and, you know, Stockman is they decided to take away that red strip on his arm that connects, you know, his body, his torso, to the red glove of Spider-Man's suit. So it's literally just comes off the shoulder into a point almost. So that's really been like a thing that I've liked recently. So I like how they incorporated that. But Chris, I will pass on to you as your last artist, because, you know, this is a guy who also could have been on my list as well.
Yeah, Alex Ross. Oh my gosh! Like, this is like definitely the king of realistic art, in my opinion. He draws actual people in these costumes, and it's more realistic than any other artist I've ever seen. And it's like human beings are projected onto the page. They have these detailed expressions, and like the environments are, and like can be actually seen in real life. It's just so, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to explain it, guys. Like, please go and pick up either Marvel's or Kingdom Come, because those are definitely two of his best work, in my opinion.
Yes.
I'm not sure what else he's done, but it's just those two alone.
His Superman suit in Kingdom Come is
Kingdom
just
Come
gorgeous.
is worth purchasing alone for his art, not even just the story. The story is great too, but his art is what makes each page just kind of pop out at you. It's great.
And if you remember, do you remember the PS2 or GameCube, depending on which system you had, Spider-Man game from 2002 with Tobey Maguire? That was a suit you could unlock, was Alex Ross's Spider-Man suit.
I actually didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
the first time I'm actually hearing this.
It was actually really cool. It looked like a more like realistic suit. It was mainly black and had the little like wrist gauntlets for webs and stuff. So it looked really cool. I appreciated it. Every now and then I'd throw that skin on, but it's something that's like a nice little heartfelt touch to it.
I like that a lot. Spider-Man 2 is probably the best Spider-Man game. Just saying.
Very true.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. This has been Geek Week with Chris and Nick. Once again, I'm Chris Natali.
And I'm Nick Rotundo.
And if you'd like to hear any of our old episodes, guys, be sure to go on our YouTube page, post it on our Facebook account, so check that out, www.facebook.com/geekweek885. Be sure to like us on there, subscribe to our channel, and share with all your friends and family.
As well as also check out our Instagram now, which is at geekweek885. And be sure to tune in next week, which is going to be a great topic that we're going to be talking about, something that I think my parents should even listen to, which is Cosplay 101. So with that, we will see you next week.
That was Geek Week with Chris and Nick. Be sure to tune in next week at 6 p.m.